Have you heard the phrase, cash flow is king? Chances are, if you've been looking into real estate investing for any amount of time, you've probably heard or seen this phrase. If you've been around real estate investing for a handful of years, you've definitely heard this phrase. I want to address it because today it is causing problems and it's stopping investors from making what could be phenomenal investments. So I want to address this right now. Before I do, go ahead and hit that like button. If you've heard the phrase cash flow is king, hit that like button. If you have not heard cash flow is king, also hit the like button. Okay, so at the time I'm recording this video, it is the year 2023. So that way when I make references to the last 10 years, you're going to have some kind of reference point. So depending on when you watch this video, things may have shifted a little bit, but either way, the message is going to be the same, no matter when you watch this video. So here's what happened. In roughly 2010, give or take, it had to do with the crash, cash flow did become king. And when people say that, here's what they're talking about. If you buy a rental property, if the income is higher than the expenses every month, you make positive cash flow. It's the physical money you put in your pocket, or I guess these days, digital money, whatever. Maybe it doesn't actually hit your pocket, but you make money every single month. That difference between the income and the expenses is called cash flow. Now, I reference positive cash flow. It could be negative. If the expenses on a property are more than the income, more than the rent that you're bringing in, you may have negative cash flow. Most of us don't really want that. But with the crash, what happened is that rents really didn't go down, but prices tanked. So all of a sudden, you could get a property for super cheap that rented for a completely normal amount, which meant huge amounts of cash flow were available. You could have positive cash flow very easily and pretty high amounts of it. In this era, people really latched onto that idea. I mean, why not? But the messaging that kind of got taken away from that is it put the idea in people's heads that the only way to profit from a rental property, I say real estate, but we're mostly talking rental properties here, that the only way to profit from rental properties is with cash flow. Ergo, the phrase cash flow is king. Everybody was like, you got to get a property with cash flow. Where's the cash flow? How much cash flow does it have? Does it have cash flow? No, I don't want it. I want the property with all the cash flow. And there was merit in that. It also taught people a lot about what to look for with rental properties. Cash flow is very straightforward. How do you calculate the cash flow? That was a great introduction in how to run numbers on a rental property, which, if you have no idea how to do that, I'll put a link to a video below that explains exactly that. It's literally my hand on a whiteboard, shows you how to run through these numbers, the cash flow numbers and the equations like cap rate, cash on cash return. Anyways, go check that out if you have no idea how to run rental property numbers. But cash flow is king worked for quite a while. The 10 years following, give or take, starting 2010, may have started a little sooner, whatever, but roughly 10 years. So the past 10 years from the time I'm recording this video, it has been very easy to be an investor. Essentially, in my opinion, people with consumer minds could pretend to be investors because it was easy. Prices were cheap, interest rates were cheap, everything was only ever going up, and cash flow was high. Now, times have changed. We're 10 years out of the crash or more. Prices have continued to increase, and now, what's the most recent thing that happened? Interest rates increase. So now your financing expenses are higher, which in turn makes cash flow lower. What this has caused is everybody who had latched onto this cash flow is king motto, they're like, well, the cash flow is not very high, I'm not buying the property. Close that door. And that's the end of it. I think that's the worst thing possible for a few different reasons. Number one, we have been spoiled for 10 years. It's not that those were normal investing conditions and now everything's high. The reality is now we're in normal investing conditions. And we happened to be spoiled back then. We're talking like 3% interest rates, low property prices. It was crazy. It was so easy to invest. We're not there anymore. And what I'm seeing is that the people who are absolutely latched on to cash flow as king are hurting. They're not buying properties. And none of us know that cash flow is ever going to come back to the level that it was back then when that phrase was coined. So, what do we do about it? Well, I'm going to tell you what we do about it, and I'm going to link you to a couple of videos that go into further detail about these topics. First things first. So wait, let me backtrack. Before I tell you these things, what are my intentions with telling you these? It's how to get past your grappling about lower cash flow. If the cash flow is not what you expected, and you have it in your head that you have to be relying on cash flow, and therefore you're not investing, you're grappling with that. How do we, what's the mindset shift we need here? What's the perspective shift? So that's what I'm going to tell you. First things first, you have to understand, oh, and by the way, this is shifting your consumer mindset into the mindset of a real investor. And that mindset is what's going to take you really far. So get excited. Okay, first things first. I've now said that at least 3 times. First things first, you have to understand how a rental property truly profits. It's not just cash flow. Cash flow is one of 5 different ways that rental properties profit. Cash flow, appreciation, equity build via mortgage paydown, tax benefits, and hedging against inflation. What in the does that all mean? Go check out the video below called The 5 Profit Centers of a Rental Property. The reason you want to know those things is because if cash flow, for example, is not as high as it used to be, well, can you make the other profit centers profit more? Are you going to be more reliant on those profit centers? If cash flow is not going to carry the weight of the profitability of your investment, how are those other things going to do it? That's why you want to know, because you can make strategic decisions on what properties to invest in based on knowing how they're going to profit in total, not just from the cash flow perspective. By the way, of those profit centers, cash flow is not by any stretch of the imagination what has made the gazillionaire real estate investors that rich. They're not that rich off of cash flow. They're that rich off the compounding effect of the other profit centers alongside cash flow working with each other. To really drive this home, the video that I want to send you to, other than go check out the 5 profit centers of rental property, what I really want to drive you towards is a video that I did about the interest rates in particular. What happens when the cash flow gets lower? Should you stop investing? And spoiler alert, the answer is no. So I really want you to check out that video because it dives further into what we're talking about right now. So, where are we? We're looking at the mindset shift. The first one is really understanding how rental property profits. The second, which I already alluded to, is how to make those profit centers work for you. That's where it takes a little more work than just playing the consumer mindset game. So, to support all of that, go check out the 5 rental profit centers of a rental property and watch the video that I recorded of should you stop investing when the interest rates get high, because that in turn makes the cash flow lower. Go check all those things out and leave comments below on how you feel about cash flow as king. Because if you're dead set on that motto and that premise, you probably aren't investing like you used to. Do you see a challenge with that? Do you think cash flow is going to come back in the way that we've known it? Where do you fall on the spectrum, and what questions do you have on it? Leave all of that below, and make sure that you've subscribed to my channel, because I want to keep all of these discussions going because they're important. So important that they're literally keeping people out of investing when I don't think they should be. You are leaving money on the table if you're waiting for the cash flow to be king again, because it's just not anymore. Sorry. But investments can still be incredibly profitable. So let's work towards that.